All right, let's get this show on the road. Welcome everyone, and thank you so much for attending the webinar today. My name is Curtis Dohaniak, and I am a product expert with Replicon. And today I will be your guide on our webinar that discusses not only solving your project time and costing challenges, but how to crush them. So we're going to look at how the Replicon platform can help you with all of your project time and costing challenge needs. So before we get going, we'll just take a quick look at our agenda for today. So here is our agenda. First, we'll have a quick overview of some project time and costing challenges that organizations have run into in the past or maybe running into now. Then we'll take a look at how you can crush these costing challenges. Then I'll guide you on a demo through our platform. And then we'll look at some of our customer transformations and see how the Replicon platform has helped our customers really enhance their time tracking needs. And finally, we'll end with a Q&A. So just a little bit of housekeeping before we continue. Throughout the presentation, you will be on mute, but don't worry, if you have any pressing questions, you can submit them in the question box on your GoToWebinar panel, and we'll get to as many as we can at the end. And if for whatever reason, you're on your way home or eating lunch and one of these questions pops into your head, you can always contact us offline as well. So at Replicon, we believe people's time is a strategic asset. And not only is it a strategic asset, but it's one of your most precious assets. Time is finite. Once it's used up, it's gone forever, and we only have so much time in a year. So how much time do we actually have on an annual basis? Well, that depends on our user base. For 500 employees, that's 1.04 million hours a year. 5,000 employees is 10.4 million hours a year. And 50,000 employees have 104 million hours a year available annually. And that is so much time. That's too much for one person, 5 people, or even 20 people to manage. You have so many things going on in your organization, and you really need to nail down exactly what your time is being used for. So what makes tracking all this time so difficult? One of those reasons is we have such fragmented and tedious systems in our organization. So we have on-premises hardware, and that's handcuffing our payroll and our CRM. And then we have our on-premise databases throwing our ERP and our PSA another way. And we have so many moving parts, and they don't always play well together. As you can see with our Fragmented system here, he has so many different pieces that aren't fitting correctly to where they should be. We need an ecosystem that works well together. So what do all these problems cause? Well, we face many challenges because of this fragmented ecosystem. We have costing and billing delays, low utilization rates, chargeback errors, inability to plan capacity, decreased profitability, and decreased future pipeline and growth. And this is all because we are not able to get a good handle on our time. So why do we need such a good handle on time? Well, everyone in your organization will use time in a different way. For example, our delivery leaders need to know about project statuses, and operation leaders need to know about operation costs and margins. Everyone is going to be pulling time from the same place. So we need an accurate and consistent source of all of this data. But it can be difficult. If you're trying to use spreadsheets, there is so much going on in there that it can be almost impossible to discern any value. So we need a way to consolidate all our time data in one place. And for that, we have the Time Intelligence Platform. Replicon's Time Intelligence Platform provides businesses with the single source of truth that they need for their time data. It helps tackle all project time tracking needs for any business and is super configurable to meet all business requirements. It scales seamlessly for large to small organizations and supports global needs like different currencies, time zones, and payrolls. Replicon is a mobile-first application and built with the changing nature of the workforce in mind. The platform is built on the latest and greatest tech to help you manage your business manage time in the most efficient manner. Finally, you can easily connect our platform with your ecosystem using our web services API, getting time, cost, pay, and even billing data to the backend system of your liking. We have a comprehensive suite to help every customer manage their employees' time, projects, jobs, costing, compliance, people, and overall profitability in an easy-to-use manner. Replicon's project time tracking and costing solutions powered by our Time Intelligence Platform has all the capabilities needed to solve challenges around project tracking, costing, and resource utilization. But you've seen enough of this slideshow, and I think it's a little bit better to show than tell. So we're going to hop right into our platform demo. So I'm just going to switch my screen over here quickly, and we will get a look at what the platform looks like in action. So with Replicon, we want to make your capture of time easy, efficient, and effective. And with our time intelligence platform, you can account for 100% of your organization's time. And let's go back to that 500 employee number. That's 1 million hours in a year. And you really have to know what these hours are doing for your company if you want to be as efficient as possible. So with Replicon, we want to help you understand which of your hours are making you money, which of your hours are costing you money, and how to better utilize your resource pool so you can run as efficiently as possible. So every single hour you enter into Replicon is packed with so much information. And here you can see the culmination of all this info. These are dashboards, and these are the living feed of everything that you fed into Replicon. But we'll cover these a little bit later. First, we have to look to the beginning, and that's with planning our projects. So let's say, for example, we're starting to plan an R&D project, and we need to be sure we are tracking every single aspect of this project, every hour entered. So if we're registering for our tax credit, that we can have a full list of everything that we have done and all the hours that we have spent. So if we do get audited, we will have full proof of all of this work. So there's a couple of ways that we can start projects within Replicon. We are an open source API, so we can interact with virtually any part of your ecosystem. So if you have a CRM program where you're planning all sorts of different projects, you can actually import all of that data directly to Replicon, and you'll get something like you see here. We can also export all this data the other way. So Replicon really plays well and fits perfectly into any ecosystem. But we do understand that not everyone will have a CRM program, for example. Replicon may be one of the only parts of your ecosystem. So we allow you to create things like projects directly in the platform itself. So if we needed to go ahead and create a project, we'll notice that everything within Replicon is highly configurable. So we really allow you to make these projects what you need them to be. So for example, right when we're creating this project right off the bat, we can choose things like billing types, billing rate time periods, revenue types, and total contract values. After this project is created, we can actually dig a little deeper and change some more of the metrics within it. So for example, we can adjust things like CapEx versus OpEx. So we give you the tools that you need to make these projects your own. So before we can start entering time towards these projects, we need to take a look at how these projects are structured within Replicon. So at the top, we have our programs. Programs are a larger initiative within an organization. And you can see each of these programs is broken down into smaller projects, and you can have as little as one project in a program or as many as you need. Another thing you'll see within Replicon quite often are tables. And these tables can have their settings changed. You can sort them by different metrics. You can see whatever pertinent information is important for your organization. Here we kind of have the basics, hours, cost, and billing. But if you wanted to drill a little bit deeper, we can actually dig down in each one of these programs and understand exactly what's going on. So once we drill down into these programs, we'll get metrics like hours, cost, billing, resources, and we'll get those on a daily, weekly, monthly, and quarterly basis. For cost, we get to look at our actuals versus our estimates. So anytime you're allocating hours or logging hours towards a specific project or program, you'll see these numbers change. So they are a live feed, and you don't have to worry about refreshing or inputting specific data. When you're logging your time, it will all feed into the correct program and project. And knowing these actuals versus estimates is so important because it really allows you to plan your business accordingly. So for example, if you start to see your actuals are creeping higher and higher and your estimates have not been decreased or increased, and you are really starting to get in a runaway project, you can start to correct things before things get too dire because you can see so far into the future based on our forecasting tools. In the inverse, if you start to see things are improving and things are going well, then you can continue business as usual. And you can use these metrics in tandem with your billing to understand how well a given project is doing. So here we have our billing versus cost, and obviously you want your billing to be substantially higher than your cost. And if you start to see the inverse happen, then you know again, that you need to start some course correction and really get a program or project turned around if you want to start making some money. So from these programs, we have all the projects that are inside of each given program. And again, we can dig down into each one of these projects to get a little bit more information, like we just saw for the parent program. So in our projects, again, we'll get hours, cost, and billing on a daily, weekly, monthly, and quarterly basis. But entering time towards just a big old generic project isn't that useful. So we actually break these projects down even further into tasks. So within Replicon, you can make task trees that make sense for your organization. For example, here you can see we have analysis, and that's further broken down into post-analysis, and then that's further broken down into surveys and interviews. So when you're entering hours towards one of these task trees, it will feed upwards, and you can really get a good idea of how far along on a project you are or how far along you should be. So for example, here we could see on our user training, online training is starting to move along. Webinar recordings should be almost complete. We're at 80% of our estimated hours, but seminars is not even on track yet. It's not even going. So this gives us a good indicator that we need to start shuffling hours over to these not started tasks, so we can not have anything that's leaving our project in the dust. We need to get rid of these laggers and start finishing everything on time. So these actuals versus estimates just really allow us to understand where we are at any given time. So now that we understand how our projects are organized within Replicon, we need to staff them. So everything within Replicon is permission-based. So our team tab will show us who's on this project, but they can only see information that we give them access to. So take Tammy Benson, for example. Even if Tammy is just assigned to this project and nothing else in this program, she won't see any of the other of that program information. Tammy will also only see things like project rates that we assign to her. So in this instance, you can see we have 4 different billing rates for this project. We can actually drill down and add or subtract billing rates at any time. And then once we've added these to our list, we can actually assign them to team members. So in this instance, everyone has the basic project rate except for Lori Wallace, where she has a senior consultant rate. And then we can always, again, add or subtract these as we see fit. We can also assign specific tasks to users. So if we want a specific user to be working on a specific task, we can actually limit their access to that task only, and that ensures they're logging their time accurately. We can also create effective start and end dates. So in this instance, for analysis, we could have our analysis going from December 11th to April 9th. And then if we wanted to keep things moving along, we could take the start date for post-analysis as April 9th and continue that forward. So it gives a natural progression of tasks for the users who are logging time towards these. But just looking at my resource pool right here, it looks like we are a little bit thin. So if I want to understand better how we have users mapped out on this project, I can actually go to my allocation tab and see exactly where all my users will be spending their time. So here I can see that all these blue hours are hours that are allocated towards this project. Gray hours are hours that are allocated towards different projects. And the 2 different shades of green are hours that are allocated towards holiday or vacation time. What we don't want to see are these little red triangles in the corner, and that indicates that we have users that are over allocated and therefore probably incurring overtime and therefore increasing our overhead, which is never the goal. So this screen can really give us a good idea of how our resources on this project are utilized, and if it makes more sense for us, we can also sort by the percentage of scheduled hours, just again, so we can have a clearer view of what our resources are doing. So I'm going to need someone to start working this week, and this project is taking place in North America. And our add user screen really exemplifies the global nature of the Replicon platform. So in Replicon, you can actually batch assign things like locations or timesheets, or you can assign them one by one. But in this case, if we have a huge organization, even 500 people, going through each person and manually assigning them a location can be tedious. So we can actually create groups of people by country, city, state, province, whatever works best for your locality. And then when we're doing things like adding users to projects, we can actually sort them by these metrics. So for example, we need someone in North America on this project. And then I noticed that there was no one with Sage skills. So let's see if we have any users that have this skill assigned to them. So just like we can assign things like cost and areas to a user, we can also assign skills, and we can actually rank them on your skills. So when we search for a skill, if there's more than one user with a skill, it will ensure that we are getting the best person with the best fit for any given job. So it looks like, let's see what Alex's schedule looks like for next week. He is very free in the coming future, so let's go ahead and add him to the project. And allocating hours is just as easy as it was to add a user to a project. And we can allocate hours in a number of ways. So if we want to allocate them by hours per day, we can go ahead and do that. We can choose what days we want Alex to work on. We can also assign total hours. So in this instance where he has nothing else going on, 40 hours might be the easiest way to assign these. But if Alex was working on another project and we wanted to make sure we're maximizing his time being used on this project and our organization as a whole, we can actually allocate a percentage of his available hours, so that we can ensure Alex's weeks are filled and he knows exactly what he should be working on. So let's go ahead and allocate these 40 hours for this week. And once we start adding these hours, it will automatically adjust your estimates and actuals for any of these users that you've added or allocated to a project, because they will be assigned a cost, and that cost will be configured into that estimate. So back to utilizing our resources to their maximum. If we go over here, we can see that we have some users that haven't been allocated 40 hours a week. So Tammy's got 35 and 32. Robert's got 36, 36, 36. So let's just imagine a scenario where we used Replicon to find 1 extra hour per week for a user annually. So we find 1 extra hour a week for Robert, that's 50 hours in a year. If we multiply that by our 500 user workforce, that's 25,000 extra hours that we have allocated more efficiently in a year. But look at instances like this where we only have 36 hours allocated. So if we found 4 extra hours per week, we multiply that by our 25,000 hours, that's 100,000 hours. If we're not allocating 4 hours properly per week, that means 10% of our hours available annually are not being allocated. So just imagine if we have full control over how to fill our user schedules up, we will be so much more efficient, and we can use that 100,000 hours towards things like projects, new projects, existing projects, streamlining existing workflows. We would be able to make a workforce so much more efficient. And to better understand this efficiency, we have our resources tab. So our resources tab is a summary of everything that every resource is doing. So we can actually drill down and show what projects they're working on, how much they're allocated towards a specific project, how much their time off. So we can really get a good idea of what each user is working on and where we could do better at allocating resources. But there may be some times when you don't necessarily know exactly who or what kind of resources you're going to need on a project. So for that, we have our placeholder resources. So let's go back to the R&D project we're planning. We want to get a better idea of how much it's going to cost and what kind of workforce we're going to need. So we can actually go ahead and assign these placeholder resources a cost and skills, and then we can start sliding these into our planned projects. So if we're looking at our R&D project, we could start putting these placeholder resources in, and it'll start giving us those actuals and those estimates, and it'll have a better idea of what kind of workforce we're going to need. And then we can start training or hiring users. And once they're ready, we can actually slot them into that project, and we don't have to worry about our data being skewed because we have already calculated everything beforehand and assigned the appropriate costs. So it really gives us accurate forecasting and allows us to be really precise when we are estimating things in the future. So now that we understand how projects are oriented within Replicon and how we're going to resource these projects, we can start logging time towards them. And we don't call ourselves a time intelligence company for nothing. Time is one of the many things that we do so well within Replicon. Feasibly, you could configure a timesheet for every user in your organization. That would be a decently long process, but we usually see different timesheets for different teams or different locations. But the options exist. You have almost infinite permutations for these timesheets. So one example of one of these permutations is we have a pretty project-oriented timesheet here. So you can log your time towards a specific client, task, a project, and if you're one of those organizations that has a lot of different project codes, you can actually search all of these, and these will also be permission-based too, right? So users are not going to see the full list. They will only see what you have given them access to, and they can go ahead and search So they're not spending their time looking for a specific code and not understanding what they should be working towards. This really allows for the succinct and accurate entry of time. From there, you can also change things like billing rates if those are applicable. So this only has the project rate, but if there's non-billable hours, for example, I'll be able to select that. I can also add time towards an activity. So we are really honing in on exactly what we are working on this project. And once you start entering time towards these projects, you'll start to see on the right that you have this progress bar, and that's going to grow with every hour you enter. So much like our task screen, this really allows users to understand how far along they should be on a project. And once you've actually reached a certain threshold, so we have it set to 75% on some other projects, but once you've reached that threshold, you will actually get a notification when you submit a timesheet that a certain threshold of a project's progress has been met. And that again will give a user an idea, okay, we either need to start closing up this task, or we are almost done and we can move on to something else. So I'm going to try to submit this timesheet. Take note of this really large amount of working hours that I've worked this week, 96. It's been a really rough go for me, but especially on Wednesday, I have logged an inordinate amount of hours. So let's see what happens when I try to submit. First thing that will happen is I did not accept my organization's attestation. So this is an example of a validation rule within Replicon. In Replicon, we have a set of validation rules that we apply to timesheets to make sure that certain parameters are being met every time time is entered. So in this instance, I did not click the attestation on the bottom here, and I am getting a gentle reminder to do so. So I can go ahead and accept this attestation, and we'll let Replicon do its thing. And the first thing I'll notice is I did trigger an error. More than 24 hours have been entered, shocking. And then I did get a timesheet rejection. So timesheet cannot be submitted if they have any validation errors. So this ensures that our time that is being entered is always clean and accurate. And we'll look at some more of these validation rules in just a minute. But first, we're going to take a look at how all of our timesheets are stored within Replicon. So one of the places that we can view all our timesheets is within our cost tab. And here you will see housed every single timesheet that has been created in your Replicon history. So some of these will not be submitted, like these guys here, and that just means that they're being filled out currently or they haven't been submitted for review, but you can still drill down and understand what's going on with each of those timesheets. You'll see a live feed of any updates that a user has made to these. We can look through our rejected, we can see what's waiting approval, so these are timesheets that need action. And we can actually sort through these as well through timesheet periods, project, or we can search through a specific user. What we'll notice here also is that we have some more of these validation warnings triggered. So it looks like Rania has had quite the go on her timesheet, 6 different validation rules triggered. Let's see what's going on with Rania. So here's an example of another project timesheet that we've configured. This is a little bit more of an organizational specific timesheet. So here they value tracking the specific time at which a project has been worked on during the day. So you can log exactly when you start working on a task or when you take your break, so that you have a better idea of how a user is spending their day. Again, we're logging tabs towards tasks, projects, and activities, but one section that we have here that we didn't have on the other one is comments. So this organization values comments, and Rania did not enter these for the day. And this could be really important because maybe Rania is working for a couple different clients, or maybe she's working for a couple different departments that day. And the organization needs to understand where her chargeback should be paid to. So Rania can leave all of this in the comments, and along with her tasks and activities, this will really streamline the chargeback process and make it easy for everyone involved. Another change on this timesheet is we have a category like mileage. So you can create these custom categories. So if you're tracking mileage or pieces produced on a day, you can change those as you go. We can also have things like a photo option, so you can attach receipts or proof of work done during the day. So really, these options are limitless. And so in this instance, we really need Rania to make these comments on each of her timesheets. So we can go back to Rania and tell her that this change needs to be made. Within Replicon, you can always go back into a timesheet and make any of these adjustments. And we'll see an example of that with Chris. So we can see Chris has also triggered one of these validation warnings. So let's drill down and see what happened with Chris. His timesheet setup is a little bit more basic. He's just logging time, not towards anything. We just need to know how long Chris is working a day. But he entered too much time for this timesheet period. Maybe this was a mistake. So what we can do is we can go back with Chris, and either I or he can reopen this timesheet and adjust everything. And you'll see any of these changes that are made will be on this approval history. So this offers full transparency for both the user and the approver. And in case of there's ever an audit or dispute, everyone will know exactly what's happened on this timesheet. And if any changes are made, everything can be sent to the appropriate deltas. So you don't have to worry about staying compliant or up to date with any of this timesheet data, because it will be automatically done for you. We also support time punching within Replicon. So you'll see an example of this here. Thomas has a whole plethora of different punches. He has punches towards projects, he has break punches, he has a lot going on. So with Thomas, we made punching easy. He can punch in from his platform, he can punch in from a mobile app, or he can punch in from the cloud clock. But what's not easy for Thomas is understanding what all of his time codes mean. So Thomas, like me, has worked a lot this week. He's logged almost 67 hours, and he has things like double time, overtime, and regular time that he has to distribute across the board. So to make this easier for Thomas and for the approvers, we can actually assign Thomas a pay rule based on his location, and we can actually overwrite his timesheet with this pay rule. So we'll automatically allocate his hours, and again, ensure that Thomas is compliant with any of the labor laws in his locale. And we wanted this ease of use to transfer over to our mobile app. So I'm going to actually switch my screen here quickly. Just give me a moment. So we wanted our mobile app to be an extension of our desktop platform. So everything that you will see in your desktop platform is available in the mobile app. We also have this lovely chatbot to help you when you are in need. But as you can see here, I have timesheets just like I did on my desktop platform. And you'll see it mimics what we saw in the desktop. So I can actually log time towards a specific client, a specific project, task. I have options to change things like billing rates, activities, distributed time. The list goes on. So we just wanted the extension of our desktop platform to appear in the mobile app. And we also wanted to make it so easy for users to keep track of all their time. Because realistically, if a user is on the go and they're trying to enter time at the end of the day when they finally get a chance to sit down, they're not going to remember exactly when they did things or exactly what they did. So we just wanted to make this time entry process so simple for everyone. And we wanted this ease of use to transfer over to our approvers. And so for that, we made our dashboard page. And our dashboard page displays all the pertinent information at a glance. So if you ever have to take action, you will either get a push notification or an email, and you can log into your app and see, okay, yeah, I have a timesheet that's waiting approval. And if I need to, and I have a bunch ready to go, I can actually batch approve or batch reject these timesheets. But since we just have Tammy's, let's drill down a little bit further and see exactly what Tammy's been up to. So it looks like Tammy's got a timesheet waiting for approval, no validation warnings triggered. She has the usual 40 hours per week. And I can actually drill into her time each day to better get an idea of what she's working on. But yeah, nothing really outstanding for Tammy, so we can go ahead and accept this timesheet. And in instances like this, we can actually use our validation rules to automatically approve this timesheet. So if we have a stringent set of validation rules, we can ensure that the time being entered is accurate. And then once this time meets all these criteria, the timesheet will automatically approve. And this saves our supervisors and administration staff so much time. Because if we don't have to go through all these business as usual timesheets, we can better spend our time on projects, for example. And to really see these validation rules in action, I'm going to just head back to the platform and give you a couple examples of the robust library of validation rules within Replicon. So as it stands now, we have 40 of these rules, and they are all configurable, and you can always add your own. But they cover things like daily and weekly overtime, yearly overtime, mandatory comments, average workday hours, break and rest break enforcement. The list goes on. So by adding as many or as few as these as you want to a timesheet, you can really ensure that the hours being entered are accurate and to what they're supposed to be logged towards. So there's two kind of validation warnings. There's one that we saw in my timesheet that actually prevents the submission of a timesheet. So if you think there's an offense so severe, you can actually reject that timesheet and that user will be forced to correct it before they can submit anything. If there's lesser offenses like we saw with Rania and Chris, they can actually submit their timesheets and this will notify a supervisor that there are a mistake, but it's not so severe. So you have options also when it comes to adding these timesheet validation rules. So now that we understand how our projects are organized, how we resource them, and how we can log time towards these projects, we want to get a better understanding of all this information that we have entered into Replicon, and we do this in a number of ways. One of those is through dashboards. So as we saw before, dashboards are the culmination of all this information that we have entered into Replicon. Like I've said so many times, they are fully configurable, so you can actually create your own dashboards from scratch, or you can edit the ones that are already there, whatever works best for you. You can have so many of these visible on a screen, and it gives you so much metrics on things like project hours, billables, top projects by cost, cost by project, the list goes on. So again, we're able to identify the health of our organization at a glance, and they're perfect for exporting into slideshows or presentations for leadership. And if we need a little bit more data than what we see here, we can drill down to each one of these dashboards and we'll be given a host of raw data. And if we wanted to go a little further, say, I was curious at what is costing so much in our customer billing system, I can even drill down into there, get some more raw data and see that it is actually me that is driving up the cost on this project. So with a couple of clicks, we were actually able to identify outliers that may be increasing our cost on a given project. And if necessary, we could start course correction. But there's also true of the inverse, that if someone's doing really well on a project, maybe they're due with some accolades and we can give those out accordingly. Another way that we display all this information within Replicon is through reports. And I'm sure you may have seen 1 or 2 or 5,000 reports in your lifetime, and that is because they are so important. They contain so much valuable information. With Replicon, we can actually schedule these reports to run daily, monthly, weekly, yearly, and we can actually send them out to specific users at specific times. So you really, again, have control over who sees this information. Broken record, all these reports are configurable and you can create them from the ground up if you need to. So again, the options exist to see what information you want to see. One example of a report that we find really useful is a project progress report. So this will actually give you a burn down of your projects based on your actuals versus your estimates on your hours and your cost. And by comparing these, you can really get a better idea of exactly how far along your project is and if your costs are starting to balloon a little bit more than they should be. And all of this information can be packaged up and sent out of Replicon. So you can send everything to your billing, accounting, payroll programs, whatever you have in your ecosystem that needs this data, we can interact with it. So not only are we receiving all this data, but you've had all this time entered in Replicon. It is so valuable. So we want you to be able to use this across your whole ecosystem. And you're going to need a way to display this information across your whole ecosystem. So for that, we have BI connectors. So Replicon connect to BI tools like Tableau, Power BI, and Google BigQuery. And using our sample workbooks, all you have to do to import all of your data is use our connector, log into your instance, and all of your Replicon data, as well as the rest of your ecosystem's data, can be imported into these workbooks and given you visualizations like you see here. And much like our dashboards, they just give you an idea of your organization's health. So if you wanted to see how projects are going, you can actually drill down into this project analyzer and get data on hours being used. But if you wanted to go a little further, you can actually see the hours being used by each user, and the list goes on. So again, we're just giving you full control over your data and making everything as simple as possible as we can in the platform. So that's going to bring us to the end of our platform tour. I'm just going to switch back my screen share, and we are going to take a look at a recap of everything we saw today, and then we will finish off with some customer examples of how Replicon has helped our past and present customers. All right. So in recap, here's a quick look at the benefits of the Replicon platform and how we have helped services businesses like yours. We have reduced revenue leakages, improved utilization, streamlined workflows, and increased the revenue generated per resource. Our first example of a customer is a computer software company. Their on-premises system did not scale as their company grew and changed, and their outdated practices led to inaccurate data across the board. After implementing Replicon, they were able to accurately track all of their time which in turn increased efficiency and made it easier to track the time they used towards their R&D tax credit purposes. Our second example is a consulting firm with over 300 employees. Their custom-built system wasn't flexible and made managing any sort of billing a nightmare. With Replicon, they achieved a single source of truth for all employee time and got proactive information to make the right business decisions. So with that, we are at the end of today's presentation. Like we discussed before, we have a comprehensive suite to help businesses manage all their time, projects, compliance, people, and profits. And today, we saw just some of the capabilities around project time tracking and costing. And we look forward to talking to you again when we discuss some of our other solutions. So that brings us to our Q&A session. Before I get going with the Q&A session, if anything ever pops into your brain or you need to get a hold of us, you can email me. My email is right here, curtis.dohaniuk@replicon.com. Dohaniuk's a tough one, D-O-W-H-A-N-I-U-K, or give us a call and we will help you out ASAP. If you did see something that really piqued your interest today and you'd like to get a customized demo, we can actually set your organization up with a demo with specialized timesheets, project arrangements, whatever works for your organization so you can really see how Replicon could help you out.